Hello and welcome to the Circularists. Welcome, Zoe Gilbertson. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. You are a fashion ecologist and a textiles systems designer.
Yeah.
And you've been exploring sustainable fashion for 25 years. You're one of the earlier people to call the alarm on the fashion industry. You've designed for major brands, you run your own business, you teach courses, and you design for innovation. So you wear many hats. Over to you. What have I missed from that introduction? What would you add?
I guess I could give a bit of context to my background. So I studied fashion in the mid 90s. And because I grew up in a household which was quite aware, my father started the fair trade movement in the UK. So I went off to do fashion, which was probably against what my parents would have wanted me to do. They just were not interested in that. But through studying, by the time I got to the third year and I got to do my final collection, I understood there was a lot wrong with the fashion industry back then. And so I looked into more ecological materials. So I researched sustainable organic cotton. And so I was sponsored by Tencel, which was considered a new ecological material back then. And, went off to design for Adidas, which was a brilliant experience, and then went to Vancouver to work for an outdoor brand. We worked with Patagonia and Nike on developing organic cotton systems. We developed recycled fleece back then. So yeah, it was really exciting to explore all of those things. And I used to think that the system was possible to change and that you could sort of green fashion. But I guess I've learned over the years that since that time, the volume of production has got so great. It's just huge.
I want to just touch on a few things here, Zoe. So 25 years ago, you caught the vision that fashion needed to be more sustainable,
Mhm.
and you turned your attention to that, quite away from what the mainstream was doing. That's quite a visionary thing to do.
Mm.
I'm going to drop some stats in a minute about where fashion is now, but back then, what was it that caused you to be able to see where we were heading?
I think back then I was looking at material use. So I think I understood that um, polyester was synthetic materials were not the right materials to use. Synthetic dyes being really damaging to the environment. But then I looked at it from a materials perspective, and I thought that governments would legislate. I thought that the system would provide the breaks, and I thought, well, we will be able to recycle polyester. I didn't realize the issues with recycled polyester and we didn't know about microplastics back then, and things that leach into the environment. But I understood that we should be working locally and that transport was a huge issue.
I want to jump in there for the audience and drop some stats that are fairly current in terms of describing the fashion industry, the fast fashion industry
Mm-hmm.
that we have right now. So this is an industry that produces 100 billion and rising garments per annum.
Mm.
100 billion.
Mm.
70% of those are made of polyester,
Mm.
which is your
Mm-hmm.
concern. Polyester is a plastic. It's made with over 70 million barrels of oil per annum.
Mm.
It's made in factories that are still largely coal powered.
Mm.
So we're layering on coal energy for production as well as oil for manufacturing polyester. Because prices are coming down further and further with fast fashion, and you've got dresses being sold for £4 and things like this. The quality has dropped because you can't produce quality at that low price. So
Mm.
margins increase, quality drops, clothes fall apart after a short amount of time wearing, and then end up in either charity shops or in landfill around the world.
Mm.
Being polyester, the garments can take up to 200 years to biodegrade, in
Mm.
which time they leak toxins into the earth and methane gases into the atmosphere. Methane being one of the fastest warming global gases, environmental gases. So that's a nightmare scenario that we're facing, and it's a colossal industry, more polluting than aviation and shipping combined. So this is for our audience to just describe the problem that we're looking at. So then you saw this coming down the track many years before we got to this point today. Let's talk about your work now and what you're focused on to redress this. And could you also let us know where you stand with regard to changing the system from inside or extra systemic change? Could you just talk us through where your work is heading?
I will focus on developing local natural fiber systems, because I think ultimately it will slow the system down, which is really important. If we have local clothing systems, we can't produce so much so quickly. It will slow things down. It will hopefully connect people to their local area. If people start becoming aware of, well, actually, we can grow linen, we can grow hemp, we have wool in abundance in the UK. They can make wonderful clothing for us if we figure out how to do it, if we relearn the skills we had from 100 years ago, if we understand that we can grow flax in our backyards, which can ultimately turn into linen. It's a very long and difficult process to turn, well, not difficult, but it's a very long process to turn a raw material, a raw fiber into a final garment, and then they're shipped to us. So if we are to make this system local, it will become more visible to more people will be involved in it. If we grow the fiber, then we can see it, we can start to understand and start to value it more.
What always surprises me is the lack of awareness of what the different fibers are, where they come from and how they're produced. And I take it for granted that people know the difference between the categories of fibers. But again, for the circularist audience, could you do it like so with linen, the different stages? So I mean, I gave my brother some linen seeds, and I had some flax sitting on my coffee table because I just wanted it to be a conversation piece. And I gave him some seeds. He said, I want to go home and grow this and see. So we can do it together if you like, but let's talk about the life cycle from flaxseed.
And I only learned about this fairly recently, a few years ago, and once you do learn about it, it becomes very fascinating. There's something kind of, once people get involved with flax, they kind of fall in love with it. And also hemp's also an amazing, industrial hemp, I should say, is an amazing product. So if you plant a flaxseed, it takes, they're very tiny. They look exactly like linseed if people are taking linseed for health. So the fiber is contained in the stem. So that takes about 100 days to grow. You harvest it the end of its growing season when it's turned yellow and it's dry. So you have to ret it in the fields or in a tank to allow the separation of the woody core and the fiber to happen. And then you have a process called rippling, where you remove the seeds. And then you scutch it, which is where it sort of gets bashed with blades. And there are big machines which can do this, or you can do it by hand. And then you end up with a sort of ponytail of flax. I'm just trying to, I might even have one here.
I've got some upstairs. I want to go bring it. Have you got some there?
I might have some here, yeah.
Let's compare our... Oh, I'll go get mine. We'll
get yours,
black.
yeah.
Okay, I'm back.
Remember, I've got some more as well.
Right, let's hold up our ponytails of flax. So this is the stage before it becomes linen fibers, right?
Yeah.
So look at this, and just look at this.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Golden
that's a large
of it.
amount. And I've
sunshine. You can literally see the sunshine in it.
I've got something here which has been half processed. So you can see here the how it starts off. So that's how
Right,
you sort of harvest it. And then this has
right.
been scutched.
Oh, there it
So
is.
yeah, that goes through another process where the fibers are stretched and drafted, and then it's prepared into a kind of roving. So there's a slight twist put on it, and then it's spun into yarn. And then once it's yarn, it can be used like any other yarn, but it's a slightly, it needs different spinning machinery to say cotton, which is a much shorter staple. So the long staple yarn of linen, which is what makes it linen and gives it that beautiful drape, is requires different machinery. So we don't have that, any of that machinery in the UK to be able to convert. We don't have anything. We don't have the scutching machinery. We don't have the spinning machinery. We don't have any of those processing facilities here at the minute.
Is there any reason why we couldn't have that in the UK? Is it?
Well, that we are working on it. So I have a group called the Bast Fiber Network, which I kind of founded just to help. There are lots of people who have these similar aims. And one of the things you realize when you want to start transformative change is that you need to network, you need to bring people together, you need to create these sort of non-hierarchical systems where people work together for knowledge transfer. So we have a Bast Fiber network, and there are a couple of members within that group who are developing small scale maker lab machinery to process linen, and they're getting some really great results, and it's called Fantasy Fiber Mill, and they hope to be able to, you know, share the plans open source for this machinery so people in their localities and places can make their own linen.
Wow. I want to ask you about wool, because wool, there's a bit of an issue with wool. There's a glut of wool, and we've got farmers that can sell a bag of wool for less than the price of an ice cream.
Yes. Yeah.
That's crazy. Can you talk about that situation?
Wool's really interesting.
I love wool so much.
It's beautiful. And honestly, I met this most amazing woman the other day who keeps Wensleydale sheep. And and she's in her 80s. She's been doing it for years. She makes the most, I haven't got an example here, but it is so silky and shiny.
Beautiful.
And we can have Wensleydale sheep in the UK. It makes a beautiful fiber, but we can have lovely British wools. But yeah, we can totally, but that's down to, we can bring back breeding systems to get the finer wool, which is suitable for use in textile garments. But, wool can be used in so many things. If it's not the fine quality to be used for yarn, it can be used in insulation, it can be used in bedding, it can replace plastic, any kind of plastic filling materials. But until plastic is more expensive than naturally materials, or until businesses are incentivized to not use that, then they're going to go for the cheaper option. Where I've got to with how I'd like to work with the system is that I would like food and fiber to be said in the same breath. So if we start thinking in systems, I would say it's food and fiber systems and building systems. So integrating with building materials, they're all related. And if we can work on this together, it becomes less about fashion and trends and fashion driving things. It becomes about what can be grown within a local system.
I just love this. This is so close to my heart. I just love that. So important for building a new way of living and doing.
Exactly. That's what it's about. That's what it's all about.
So Zoe, thank you so much for joining me on The Circularists. This has been a fascinating exploration, and I'm sure it will be for the Circularist audience. But wonderful to hear about your work and your passions. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great. Thank you for having me.